China was supposed to be Porsche's unstoppable growth engine, the market that printed money, the place where Cayenne sold faster than Stuttgart could build them, where waiting lists stretched for months, where being seen as a Porsche wasn't just status, it was a rival. Instead, it just became their biggest problem. Deliveries down nearly 30%, demand fading like morning fog, Chinese EV rivals closing in with tech that makes Porsche's infotainment look like it's running on dial-up. And inside Stuttgart, behind closed boardroom doors, a new plan is taking shape. One that could decide Porsche's entire future. Because here's the thing, when China sneezes, luxury automakers catch pneumonia, and Porsche, they're running a fever. In this video, we're diving into how the world's most profitable car company lost its grip on the world's biggest market, and whether their plan to get it back is brilliant strategy or desperate damage control. Let's get into it. Now, we're going to rewind a decade. China wasn't just a market for Porsche, it was the market for Porsche. By the early 2020s, it had become the largest single territory, accounting for roughly a third of global deliveries. Think about that for a second. One country, 1/3 of all Porsches sold worldwide. And it wasn't the 911 driving those numbers, it was SUVs. The Cayenne and Macan became the ultimate flex for China's rapidly expanding wealthy class. They were perfect. Recognizable, luxurious, practical enough for city traffic, but still dripping with that Stuttgart engineering credibility. Showrooms couldn't keep them in stock. Waiting lists ballooned. Dealers got bold with markups, and Porsche, well, they were printing money so fast the finance team probably needed carpal tunnel braces. This was the dream scenario. Porsche had cracked the code. Give Chinese buyers the prestige of German engineering wrapped in a package practical enough for Shanghai traffic and status conscious enough to impress at the country club. It was a gold mine, but gold mines don't last forever, and sometimes when you're too busy counting money, you miss the ground shifting beneath your feet. Here's where the story turns. In 2024, Porsche's China sales dropped 28%. Nearly 80,000 deliveries in 2023 became just 56,887 cars a year later. And 2025 got even worse. Through the first 9 months, deliveries were down another 26%, just 32,195 cars. We're talking about a market that used to move close to 30,000 Macans alone, suddenly going cold. So what happened? Well, first, the macro environment collapsed. China's luxury spending took a beating. The real estate sector, which had minted millionaires like a central bank on overdrive, imploded. Property values tanked, confidence evaporated, and when wealthy Chinese buyers get nervous, the first thing they do is stop buying six-figure German SUVs. But that's only part of it. Because while the economy was stumbling, something more dangerous was happening. Chinese buyers were waking up to better options. Local brands started offering EVs with tech that made Porsche systems look ancient. Massage seats with 18-way adjustability. Infotainment that actually worked. Voice assistants that didn't sound like they were translated through 3 layers of Google Translate, and prices that undercut Stuttgart by 30% or more. Suddenly, Porsche wasn't competing on heritage and driving dynamics, they were competing on features and value, and in that fight, they were getting destroyed. Porsche admitted as much in their earnings call. Weaker demand, intense local competition, that's all corporate speak for we're getting our lunch eaten. The golden era was over and the hangover was brutal. Now, here's what people outside the industry don't realize. When China stops buying, it doesn't just hurt China operations, it breaks the entire system. Porsche's global profitability took a hit. Margins compressed. Factories that had been running at full tilt suddenly had excess capacity, and when you're a company built on precision and efficiency, idle production lines are basically burning cash. So Stuttgart did what companies do when panic sets in. They started cutting. Cost reduction programs, structural savings initiatives, the kind of corporate jargon that sounds boring until you realize it means people lose jobs and dealers lose franchises. And the leadership shakeups were brutal. Porsche replaced their China boss, dealer networks got trimmed, the entire operation went into damage control mode, trying to stop the bleeding while figuring out what went wrong. But here's the scary part. This wasn't just a China problem, it was a signal, a flashing red warning light that Porsche's entire playbook, the one that had worked for decades, might not work anymore. Because while Stuttgart was scrambling to understand what happened, their competitors were already 3 moves ahead. Let's talk about the real threat. It's not just that Chinese buyers stopped wanting Porsches, it's that they started wanting something else, and that something else was coming from companies Stuttgart didn't even consider competition 5 years ago. Tesla's Shanghai Gigafactory had been churning out cars at a pace that makes traditional automakers look like they're hand-building carriages. Model Ys are everywhere, and they're not cheap knockoffs, they're genuinely good cars with tech that feels a generation ahead. But Tesla's just the opening act. The real disruptor is Chinese EV brands like BYD, NIO, XPeng, and even newcomers like Xiaomi. They're building luxury EVs with interiors that rival Mercedes, tech stacks that embarrass most Germans, and prices that make Porsche's MSRP look like a typo. And here's the kicker. Chinese buyers don't care about Nürburgring laps. They care about whether the car has a refrigerator in the back seat. They care about whether the voice assistant understands Mandarin perfectly. They also care about over-the-air updates that actually add features instead of just fixing bugs. Porsche's entire value proposition of heritage, engineering purity, motorsport DNA, it all suddenly felt irrelevant, old, like showing up to a drone race with a World War II Spitfire. So, Porsche did something they almost never do. They admitted they were behind. In 2024, they announced plans for a China-specific R&D center focused on localized infotainment solutions. The translation being, we finally realized our software is embarrassing and we need Chinese engineers to fix it before 2026. But that's a band-aid. The real question is whether Porsche can fundamentally shift fast enough to compete in a market that's already rewriting the rules. Okay, so Porsche got punched in the face hard. The question now is, what are they doing about it? Enter Strategy 2030 Plus, Porsche's grand plan to reinvent themselves without losing their soul. It's built on 4 pillars: customers, products, sustainability, and transformation. Those are corporate buzzwords, sure, but underneath there's actual substance. First, the product strategy. Porsche was all in on EVs, full electrification by 2030, battery everything. Then China happened, demand wobbled and reality hit, so they pivoted hard. The pure EV platform delayed, hybrid development doubled down. The 911 is getting a plug-in hybrid variant. The Cayenne and Panamera hybrids are getting more focus. Porsche essentially admitted that the all-electric future they were betting on isn't arriving as fast as they thought, and buyers still want engines. That's a massive shift, and it's happening because China taught them a brutal lesson. Buyers don't care about your electrification timeline, they care about what works for them right now. Then there's the China-specific changes. Porsche is trimming dealer networks, fewer showrooms but better ones. They're shifting to what they call value-oriented sales, which is code for we're going to stop pretending markups are sustainable. They're localizing tech. They're even exploring China-exclusive features to compete with local brands on their own turf. But here's the gamble. All of this assumes Chinese buyers still want Porsche, that the brand still means something, and that Stuttgart's heritage is worth the premium even when a BYD offers more tech for half the price. And that's not guaranteed anymore, because the real battle isn't about products, it's about relevance, and right now Porsche is fighting to prove that they still have it. Now, here's what makes this moment so fascinating and so dangerous. Porsche is caught between 2 worlds. On one side, there's everything that made them legendary. The engineering obsession, the motorsport DNA, the way a flat 6 sounds at redline, the analog purity of a GT3. That's the Porsche that built a religion around driving feel and mechanical perfection. On the other side, there's the future. Software-defined vehicles, over-the-air updates, digital ecosystems, EVs that accelerate like they're breaking physics, a world where driving feel matters less than whether your car can autonomously park itself while you're ordering coffee. And China's already made its choice. The future won. Chinese buyers don't want to hear about Nürburgring lap times, or naturally aspirated engines for that matter. They want the best tech, the most features, and the smoothest experience, and if Porsche can't deliver that, someone else will. So Porsche's facing an existential question. Can they be both? Can they preserve the soul that made them iconic while building the tech-forward, software-rich, China-friendly products that modern buyers demand? Because if they get this right, they don't just survive, they become the blueprint for how legacy brands evolve without losing themselves. They prove that heritage and innovation aren't enemies. But if they get it wrong, if they move too slow or try to protect the past at the expense of the future, then China's EV revolution won't just disrupt Porsche, it'll rewrite the entire luxury performance rulebook without them. And that's the stakes. This isn't just about recovering sales in one market, it's about whether Porsche, the Porsche we know, can still exist in 10 years. So here's where we land. Porsche stumbled in China, hard. They misread the market, underestimated the competition, and got caught flat-footed by an EV wave that moved faster than anyone in Stuttgart could have ever predicted. But here's the thing. They might have just learned the lesson that saves them everywhere else, because China isn't an outlier anymore. It's a preview. The shift toward EVs, the demand for cutting-edge tech, the expectation that cars should feel more like smartphones than machines, that's coming to Europe, to America, and to every market Porsche operates in. So the plan they're building to recover in China is not just a regional strategy, it's the blueprint for Porsche's entire future. Will it work? Well, that's the billion-dollar question, and we're about to find out. Because the future of luxury performance is being decided right now, and this time it won't be won by noise, it'll be won by whoever figures out how to make people feel something even in silence. Stay tuned, because Porsche's next move could change everything.